We've received a question on squatting exercises for taller athletes. Now, at Boxing Science, we're quite used to having taller athletes for their weight categories because they need to have long levers, long limbs to gain an advantage over their opponents. Especially when we're working towards a heavier weights, where we're working with heavy weights, the taller the athlete, the longer lever length they have. And this can make squatting, deadlifting and kind of pressing exercises more troublesome for taller athletes. So let's talk about squatting. So with their legs being longer, especially their femurs, this will impact ankle mobility, which will increase the shear forces going onto the knees. And also with their torso being a lot longer as well, this can make them have a little bit more of a forward lean, especially when they're doing the back squat. So we've got to use different squatting variations to help suit that athlete, to make sure that squatting is done in a safe way, to make sure that we're improving them foundational movement patterns for an effective squat, but also to help reduce them shear forces on the knees and the lower back, and to help optimize that weight load so we can maximize their physical adaptations from the training process. So I'm going to show you 3 exercises now to help improve movement, reduce them shear forces, and also optimize weight load. So a great squatting exercise to use with a taller athlete is a landmine squat. This is a fantastic exercise to use to help build fundamental squat patterns. The landmine squat is a fantastic exercise because the trajectory of the bar helps use that hip hinge pattern that is needed in a foundational squat movement. Now, with taller athletes, because they've got longer legs, what they tend to do when they come down, they're quite upright or wanting to lean forward, but particularly the knees are going to overtrack the toes because they've got poor ankle mobility and they've got long femurs. So the knees are going out over the toes. This makes the squat more quadricep dominant movement, and also they've got shear forces going through the knee. So this is where athletes can associate knee pain with doing squats. Whereas the landmine squat, the trajectory of the bar takes you back and helps you use your hips a lot more. So then the knees are in line with the toes, but no overtracking. So we're getting our glutes more involved, but also reducing the shear forces on the knee joint. So to show you a quick demonstration, you're gonna grab the bar. You're gonna have the bar in a landmine attachment. We've got ours set up in the squat rack, but you can get an attachment that actually sits into a weight plate, and this can be bought like off Amazon or other websites. You're going to have a slight lean into the bar to start off with, and the fulcrum of the bar is just sitting into your chest. And then you're going to have your feet shoulder width apart. You're going to push your knees to the outside, sit into that deep squat pattern, and then drive up, squeezing glutes at the top, getting that full hip extension. We're pushing the hips back, the knees go out wide, we're sitting onto the heels, we keep our core tense all the way through. Nice, slow, controlled tempo on the way down, and aggressive driving through the heels on the way up. Now, at the start, I explained that we want a slight lean at the top. The reason why, because of the trajectory of the bar, it's hard to start in an upright position, come down and get that depth. So I'm here, I'm really sitting back onto the heels, I'm rounding over, and find it really hard to achieve that full squat pattern. So it's important to lean in first, to get that natural groove, to sit into that squat, and then drive it up. So the next squatting exercise for taller athletes is a box squat. Now this is an exercise where you can improve strength, but reduce them forces on the lower back and the knee. Because we're taking away that bottom bit where we're having to really control, it's giving us more support, so it reduces them forces on the lower back and the knee. So in terms of setting up the box height, I'd say this is an exercise to help improve functional movement, but also want to improve strength. So you don't want to get one too deep where you're reducing the load that's on the bar, but also you don't want something too high where we're not getting that full range of motion. So I'd say to get a box where you set up, where it's just around about above 90 degrees. So this is about where you'd be squatting to for most boxers. If you want to go, if your boxer is struggling and you've seen a bit of a drop off in terms of what they can squat, try and go a little bit higher, maybe like an 80 or 70 degree angle. So I'll show you a quick demonstration on how to perform the box squat. You're going to grab the bar, pop it onto the top of your shoulders and step back. You want your feet shoulder width apart, but you're not wanting your feet too close to the box, because you want it to be, again, you want to be using your hips and not going too far forward with your knees. So it's a little bit in front of the box, sitting back, pushing your knees out wide, and then driving up. A slight touch on the box. What I don't want to see is you relaxing, being in an upright position, and almost like you can lift up your feet off the floor. You want to make sure that you're still pushing against the floor, creating that energy, and then driving up. A progression from this is to do a quick touch and go, but I'd say just generally start off your athlete, a little touch, and drive up. Like I said, you want to make sure that you're making it as much like a squat pattern without the box as possible. So this next squatting variation for taller athletes is the Anderson squat. This can really unlock an athlete's strength, their maximal strength, because we're working from a partial range, so we can really overload that squat pattern. Like I said before, it can be quite hard for a taller athlete to achieve them weight loads to optimize physiological adaptations, and this exercise can certainly do that. It's a very good exercise that we use with a lot of boxers to help improve their strength, speed and explosiveness. So I'm going to demonstrate the Anderson squat. So you want to get into a partial range squat. So I'd like to use a quarter squat, because this is where you can really overload the movement. We're going to sit in, we're going to make sure that we're pushing our hips back and our knees pushed down. We can be quite guilty of trying to be too upright in that Anderson squat position. So use them hips, fire up them legs, and then you really potentiate your hips to drive forward into a powerful hip extension. You need to make sure that you're taking a deep breath in before you go to create that core tension, and then drive it up nice and forceful. I'd say for athletes to go between 3 and 5 repetitions, and to target around about 110 to 120% of their 1 rep max. To start off with though, go for your 1 rep max, try and perform that 3 to 5 times, and then start building it up week by week to really unlock that maximum strength. So the next question is around conditioning methods for heavyweight boxers. Now this is a topic that we've covered quite a lot of boxing science, because heavyweight boxers are a different breed of athlete. You know, they're tall, they can go from 6 foot all the way through to 6'9". They can range from 16 all the way up to 19 stone. So this has a different impact on the different kinds of conditioning methods that they need in terms to suit their sport, their kind of punch outputs. They're producing a lot of force in them punches as well. So they need a different conditioning stimulus from a physiological standpoint. Now I'm going to talk about the biomechanical standpoint of that, them being tall and quite heavy. When they're running, we don't want to expose them to too high impact forces or training volumes as well, because they can end up picking up overuse injuries, especially around the joints, the ankle, the knee joint, and also the lower back. So we alter the different kind of work to rest ratios on the curve and on the treadmill. This is what Alan will talk about in a short while. But also we limit the amount of times that they actually run. So we normally do 1 or 2 running sessions maximum per week with a heavyweight boxer. Then we'd look to use alternative conditioning tools. So something off feet where they don't have them high impact forces, but we can stress them and put them into uncomfortable situations to target them physiological responses. So typical exercises that we use, particular methods that we use, the air bike, the watt bike, and also we do some circuits as well. These circuits have upper body stimulus as well, because they're carrying a lot of upper body muscle mass. So this has a contribution to their conditioning levels. So we need to make sure that they have a certain level of upper body conditioning over like kind of lighter boxers. So this circuit here is a fantastic conditioning tool for heavyweight boxers to improve their upper body conditioning.
Okay, just like we make considerations with strength training for heavyweights, we've got to make some considerations in their conditioning. Now, heavyweights throw a lot of high force punches and they're very, very muscular. So what we need to do is work on their peripheral side of their fitness. And what that means is we're really trying to target adaptations at the muscle level so they can continue to throw high force punches, but also deal with the demands of their opponent when they're holding and clinching and producing those high consistent, high force, high demand activities. So we would undertake training periods of muscle buffer training to deal with that level of acidosis that is, concomitant with those high forces. And we'd also undertake periods of sprint interval training, again, encouraging those high forces, high levels of lactate and acidosis to induce those peripheral adaptations so they can produce high forces repeatedly throughout the bout.